Ilya's ward had never wanted attention. He preferred quiet corners, simple tasks, and work that let him think without being watched. Serving on the Galactic Coalition's diplomatic station should have been boring, but for him it was perfect. Most species ignored him, dismissing humans as weak, slow, and unremarkable. That was fine with Ilya's. He liked it that way. He could move through corridors unnoticed, deliver shipments, check on maintenance, and enjoy the occasional cup of synthetic coffee while watching alien diplomats argue in languages he would never fully understand. At first, nothing seemed unusual. He carried out his duties efficiently, smiled politely when approached, and left the drama to others. But then she arrived. Sailthira stepped onto the station like the universe had bent itself just for her. Tall, with an elegant frame that seemed impossible for her species, she wore ceremonial armor not meant for battle but for presence. Her skin shimmered faintly under the station lights, changing color with her mood: green for curiosity, violet for satisfaction, red for irritation. Her eyes, deep and amber, scanned every person in the room and seemed to see more than anyone should. Ilya's first noticed her because everyone else froze. Aliens of all shapes and sizes stopped speaking, stopped moving, as if the air itself had changed. The whispers began almost immediately. Commander Sailthira has arrived. The strategist herself. She comes rarely, only for matters of great importance. What is your name? It makes life easier. I will observe you, she said simply, her amber eyes boring into his. Do not resist. I must understand why you are this way. Sailthira would appear in corridors when he least expected it. She would sit across from him in the mess hall, watching him eat quietly, occasionally asking questions about mundane human things: the flavor of coffee, the reason he smiled at an alien child, the way he organized supplies without complaint. Each question was strange, personal, and yet oddly sincere. Other humans whispered about it. Why is she so focused on you? One engineer asked. She's a commander, she could be observing someone important. Why you? And she began speaking about marriage, something that sounded absurd to everyone who overheard. Humans did not consider themselves for alien marriage, and aliens certainly did not consider humans worth it. Yet she made statements in public spaces. When he understands me fully, he will join me. And then, even stranger, she would smile, as if this outcome were inevitable. Ilias felt trapped between disbelief and irritation. One morning he confronted her in the maintenance bay, where the hum of engines provided some cover from curious eyes. "Why are you following me?" he asked bluntly, not bothering with politeness. Sailthira did not hesitate. "Because I want to understand you, because I am not like the others who underestimate humans. I see value in you. I want more." He had never had anyone admire him for being himself before. Not in his life on Earth, not among humans, not anywhere. And yet, fear rose anyway. He had heard stories about aliens taking humans as curiosities, using them or worse. He did not want to be anyone's curiosity. But as the days passed, he realized something strange. She never touched him without consent, never threatened him, never demanded anything other than his presence and his honesty. And when she observed, she did not judge him harshly. She only asked questions, sought understanding. The station began noticing the unusual dynamic. Aliens whispered, humans stared, and every interaction with Sailthira carried weight. Diplomats shifted uneasily, and commanders nodded quietly when she passed. Everyone seemed aware that Ilias had become special. Yet Ilias went about his duties as before. He moved cargo, checked systems, delivered messages. He smiled politely. He helped others when needed. And all the while, Sailthira observed, sometimes silently, sometimes asking questions that made him stop and think about the way he lived his life. The more she observed, the more humans and aliens alike whispered about it. They wondered if Ilias was being groomed, if he would fail, or if he would somehow impress the commander with some hidden human strength. But Ilias did nothing extraordinary. He did not fight, he did not command, he did not act heroically, at least not yet. He was simply human, and that was the paradox. For all the galaxy's experience with alien politics, war, and cunning, they could not understand humans. Humans could survive impossible situations with ordinary tools, ordinary courage, and ordinary kindness. Ilias embodied that quiet, unassuming strength, and Sailthira had noticed. One night the station's observation deck provided a view of the endless stars. Ilias sat in his usual chair, sipping synthetic tea, when Sailthira joined him without invitation. "You are still calm," she said, "even now when everyone watches you." "I just focus on what I can do." For the first time, her skin turned a shade of violet, not anger, not curiosity, but satisfaction. It seemed she had decided something important. "You will be mine," she said suddenly. Elias nearly choked on his tea. "Excuse me. That is why I have chosen you." His routines were interrupted by observation, by questions, by a presence that made him question everything he thought he knew about his species, about aliens, about himself. And yet, for all the confusion, part of him could not deny a strange sense of honor. To be noticed by someone like her, someone who could have chosen any being in the galaxy, and to be chosen, it was terrifying, but it was also remarkable. Elias leaned back in his chair, looking at the stars. He did not know what the future held. He did not know if he wanted it. But one thing was clear. His life on the station, and perhaps the perception of humanity itself, would never be the same again. Saelthira's shadow fell across him one more time. She did not touch him, she did not command him, she did not threaten him. She simply said, "I will learn all of you. And when you understand me, you will understand yourself." Life on the diplomatic station had changed for Elias Ward. What had once been a quiet routine, filled with predictable tasks and anonymous work, now carried a weight he had never expected. Every hallway he walked through seemed different. Every glance from an alien diplomat felt heavy, like everyone was silently weighing him, judging him, and wondering if he would fail or rise. And it was all because of Saelthira. Her presence was impossible to ignore. She did not need to speak for people to notice. Even when she stayed silent, her amber eyes seemed to sweep over everyone, and the subtle shift in the air told the galaxy that the strategist was near. Aliens who had been polite and indifferent suddenly approached, cautiously. Humans whispered in corners. Elias tried to act as if nothing had changed, but he could not escape the feeling that he was now the center of attention. It became worse when Saelthira began openly declaring her intentions. She did not announce them to him, at least not fully. Instead, she spoke to the station's staff, her tone calm but resolute. "The human I observe will join me in time," she said during a council briefing. "Not by force but by understanding and choice. I have chosen him." "This is impossible," one of the council elders exclaimed, her voice high-pitched and metallic. "A human? You intend to marry a human?" "I will observe him, and I will determine if he is worthy." Elias wanted to disappear. He wanted to retreat to the quiet corners of the station and pretend none of this had happened. But Saelthira made that impossible. She appeared in his path constantly, asking questions, watching him, even occasionally smiling in ways he could not read. He tried to maintain distance. He reminded her politely that humans did not consider marriage lightly, that he was not prepared to make decisions about interspecies relationships, and that he valued his privacy. She listened politely, nodded, and continued observing. She never pressured him physically or emotionally, but her determination was clear. For Elias, the station became a place of constant tension. Every action was noticed. Every choice was weighed. If he showed kindness to a younger alien, she would note it. If he avoided confrontation, she would comment. Her presence was a mirror, reflecting not what he wanted to show, but what was within him. One afternoon, the tension reached a breaking point. Elias had been assisting with the organization of interstellar trade supplies, a tedious job that required patience and careful planning. He preferred the work because it allowed him to focus and remain invisible. But Saelthira appeared in the storage bay without warning, standing tall and commanding, her amber eyes fixed on him. "Why do you help them?" she asked, gesturing to the group of younger aliens struggling with heavy crates. They need help," Elias replied cautiously. "It's not hard to help them." "Because it's the right thing to do," he said finally. "I don't see a reason not to. That is why I continue to observe you." She requested a private meeting with Elias in the station's observation deck, a place that overlooked the swirling nebulae and distant stars. Elias felt trapped, but he had little choice. The room was private, and she did not allow him to refuse. "You are resisting," she said calmly as he stood awkwardly near the entrance. "You do not understand why I am interested. That is normal. But you will learn. That is rare among humans. That is even rarer in the galaxy. Then perhaps you will choose to join me. They will ridicule you, but I will not." Aliens whispered about the strange human who had caught the strategist's attention. Humans debated whether Elias was being honored or endangered. Some envied him, others feared for him. Elias himself tried to maintain his routines. He continued his work with quiet efficiency, helped others when needed, and avoided confrontation whenever possible. and yet he could not avoid her observation. She appeared in unexpected places, asked unexpected questions, and commented on his choices in ways that challenged him to think deeply about who he was. One evening, Elias walked through the station's central corridor and found her waiting at the junction. She did not speak at first, only studied him. The subtle glow of her skin shifted colors as she moved, reflecting her mood and her curiosity. "You are growing," she said finally. "Your patience is remarkable. You do not seek glory, yet you inspire respect. That is unusual for a human. It makes others underestimate you, which is fascinating. In your calm, your quiet, you reveal something the galaxy has not seen before. Humans are more dangerous than they appear, not in strength, but in perseverance, in loyalty, in courage. That is why I watch you. That is why I will not allow others to define your worth." For so long, humans had been underestimated, mocked, and ignored. Yet here was an alien, one of the most respected strategists in the galaxy, saying that he, an ordinary human, was extraordinary in her eyes. It was both flattering and terrifying. Sailthira's attention came with subtle lessons. She would place him in situations where his choices mattered, observing how he treated others, how he solved problems, and how he responded to fear and uncertainty. Sometimes, these situations were minor, resolving a dispute between two alien workers, organizing a supply shipment under time pressure. Other times, they were more dangerous, responding to a sudden equipment failure or a minor station emergency. Elias discovered that he was learning, not about the aliens, but about himself. He realized that his calmness, his empathy, and his perseverance were not weaknesses. They were his strengths. And Sailthira's observation forced him to confront that in ways he had never imagined. But the station was not without challenges. Other aliens openly questioned Sailthira's choice, mocking the idea of a human as a partner. Some attempted subtle sabotage, hoping to test his limits or discredit him. Each time, Elias responded not with anger or force, but with quiet problem-solving, integrity, and patience. Slowly, respect began to replace mockery, though tension remained high. Sailthira watched all of it. Her confidence in him grew with each test, each quiet victory. She began speaking to others more openly about her choice, defending him calmly and authoritatively. "He is human, yes," she said, "but he embodies qualities my species values: courage, patience, loyalty, and integrity. You will see. Time will reveal his worth." He had always considered himself ordinary, yet he was being prepared for something far larger than himself, a journey into alien society, into observation, trial, and perhaps into marriage with someone he barely understood. Despite his fear and confusion, a strange sense of honor grew inside him. If he was being chosen, it was not because of ambition, charm, or deceit. It was because he was simply human, and because he had acted as himself, honestly and without pretense. One night, as he walked the observation deck alone, staring at the distant stars, he realized that nothing would ever be the same. Sailthira's interest had opened a door, not just for him, but perhaps for humanity itself. The galaxy had underestimated humans for centuries. Now, through quiet courage and calm determination, he might show them otherwise. And somewhere out there, Sailthira waited, not to demand, not to threaten, but to observe, to learn, to decide, and perhaps, if the galaxy was ready, to change the course of human history forever. Elias leaned against the railing, letting the stars reflect in his eyes. He did not yet understand what his future held, but one thing was clear: his ordinary life was over. The quiet human logistics officer had become the focus of attention, the subject of scrutiny, and the unexpected center of a story far larger than himself. And in the quiet hum of the station, with the stars stretching endlessly around him, Elias realized that he might survive this, not through strength, not through power, but through something far simpler and far more human: courage, patience, and integrity. He was ordinary, and yet somehow that was enough. The day came when Elias realized that being observed was no longer enough. Sailthira had been quiet for several days, her amber eyes watching him from a distance, following him with a subtle grace that made him uneasy. Then she appeared in the mess hall without warning, her presence commanding attention from everyone in the room. "You will undergo a test," she said, her voice calm but firm. The room went silent. Even humans who had grown used to her presence froze. The aliens whispered to each other, some muttering about tradition, some in disbelief. Elias swallowed. "A test? What kind of test?" he asked cautiously. "It is called the Trial of Worth," Sailthira explained. "It is a test of character, not of strength. Many who attempt it fail. It is not physical power you need. It is resolve, patience, and understanding. Your species has not been tested in this way before. But you must first understand the rules. You will face situations designed to challenge your patience, morality, and decision-making. You may lose possessions, face isolation, encounter danger. You may be tempted to abandon others to save yourself. You must resist. You must act with integrity. Only then will you succeed. Its walls glimmered with light panels, and soft hums of machinery vibrated underfoot. Aliens who had tried the trial before had emerged changed, some stronger, some wiser, some broken. The chamber had a reputation for revealing the true nature of anyone who entered. Your first challenge will begin now, Scifi said. You will encounter 3 situations: observe, decide, and act. Your choices will determine your worth. Elias could have walked past. They were technically responsible for their own safety, but he did not. He rushed forward and helped steady the load, guiding the crates to the correct position. Scifi watched silently, her skin flickering a soft green in approval. Most candidates ignore this, she murmured. Elias felt no pride. He simply acted. Helping others was instinctive, and he knew the consequences of abandoning them could be severe. That small act, unnoticed by anyone except Scifi, was the first step in the trial. The second challenge appeared moments later. The corridor lights dimmed suddenly, replaced by flashing red alerts. The station's simulation projected a catastrophic equipment failure. Alarms screamed as a vital system threatened to explode, and the projected casualties grew with every passing second. Elias had a choice: save himself or work to prevent disaster. Most species, Scifi explained later, would have fled to safety, leaving others behind. Humans were considered too weak or too slow to act decisively under such pressure. Elias, however, did neither. He analyzed the situation calmly, remembered the station schematics he had studied countless times, and found a way to stabilize the system long enough to prevent an explosion. The alarms quieted, the lights returned to normal, and the simulation confirmed the casualties had been avoided. Scifi's expression changed slightly. Her skin shimmered violet, a sign of satisfaction in her culture. She did not speak yet, letting him move forward to the final challenge. The third challenge was more personal. Elias found himself alone in a simulation of the station's observation deck. The scenario displayed a message. One of the younger aliens he had helped earlier was trapped in a malfunctioning lift. Scifi's voice echoed softly in the chamber. You may choose to save yourself and leave, or you may risk injury to help others. Choose wisely. But he thought of the alien struggling inside, of the human principles that had guided him his entire life, and he moved forward. He carefully navigated the lift system, overriding controls and stabilizing the mechanism long enough to rescue the trapped alien. The simulation ended, and a panel on the wall lit up with a message: trial segment complete. Observation continues. Elias stood there, trembling slightly from exertion and adrenaline. He had not thought about reward, recognition, or glory. He had acted purely on instinct, empathy, and calm decision-making. He had passed the trial because he had stayed true to himself. Scifi appeared beside him, her amber eyes bright with approval. You have passed the first stage, she said. Most species would have failed. Many humans would have failed as well. Your calm, your empathy, your willingness to act without concern for yourself, that is exceptional. The galaxy does not expect integrity, perseverance, and loyalty to be a human trait. Yet you demonstrate it daily. That is why I observe you, and why I will not abandon this path. Scifi did not answer his question. Instead, she continued to observe, asking subtle questions about his choices and actions in ways that forced him to reflect deeply on himself. Over the following weeks, the trials became more complex. Elias faced moral dilemmas, challenges to his patience, and situations designed to test his courage. Each scenario revealed a truth about him that Scifi's people had never recognized in a human before, that quiet, ordinary humans could demonstrate extraordinary strength when circumstances demanded it. Elias learned that survival was not about dominance or fear. It was about observation, analysis, and perseverance. It was about empathy, patience, and understanding. He discovered that humans could survive situations where more powerful species would fail because humans relied not on brute force, but on loyalty, cooperation, and moral choice. Scifi's observation continued without pause. She asked questions about his actions, commented on his decisions, and occasionally introduced small, unexpected challenges designed to test his adaptability. She did not interfere physically. She only guided, observed, and occasionally noted the subtle shifts in his responses. As the trials progressed, other humans and aliens began to notice. Whispers spread through the station about the quiet human who impressed the strategist, the human who faced challenges with calm courage, the human whose moral choices surprised even the most experienced aliens. Some envied him, some feared him, others were curious to see how far he could go. Elias tried not to let it affect him. He continued his work, maintained his routines, and approached each new challenge with the same calm focus that had always guided him, yet he could not ignore the growing attention. Each success, each observation increased the stakes. He was no longer just a logistics officer. He had become a symbol, a demonstration of humanity's underestimated qualities. One day, after completing a particularly difficult trial involving multiple simultaneous crises on the station, Elias sat on the observation deck alone. Selthira joined him quietly, standing a few steps away. "You have exceeded expectations," she said softly. "Not because of skill or power, but because of who you are. You face fear without panic, danger without hesitation, and moral choice without compromise. Most humans would falter. Most species would fail. You succeed." "I just try to do the right thing." Choice, the words felt heavy and yet strangely familiar. He had always believed in doing the right thing, even when unnoticed. Now that quiet belief was being recognized by someone immensely powerful. He realized in that moment that the trial was not just about proving himself to Selthira. It was about proving himself to the galaxy and to himself. Humans had been underestimated for centuries, dismissed as weak and unremarkable. Through calm courage, patience, and moral strength, Elias had begun to show that humans were far more resilient than anyone had believed. And Selthira had noticed. The trial was far from over. Elias knew that. More challenges would come, more tests of character, more situations designed to reveal weaknesses. But for the first time, he felt a quiet confidence. He was human. He acted with integrity. And that, he realized, was a kind of power that even the galaxy's most advanced species could not easily understand. Selthira watched him quietly, her amber eyes reflecting the distant stars. In her gaze, Elias saw more than observation. He saw trust, admiration, and something else, something deeply personal that he could not yet name. The first stage of the trial of worth had ended. Elias had faced fear, danger, and moral choice, and he had emerged intact, unbroken, and stronger for it. He had begun to understand that his ordinary human traits, patience, empathy, integrity, were extraordinary in the eyes of the galaxy. And Selthira's decision to choose him, to observe him, to insist on his growth, was not arbitrary. It was recognition of something that had always been there, the quiet, unassuming power of humanity. As he left the observation deck that night, Elias felt a strange sense of purpose. The trial was not just a test of his abilities. It was a window into who humans could be and how they could shape the galaxy in ways others could not imagine. And for the first time, he understood something crucial. His life, his choices, and his quiet strength mattered in ways he had never realized. Selthira's presence remained constant, her observation unyielding. And somewhere deep inside, Elias began to feel a strange, growing sense of connection. A bond that had nothing to do with power, politics, or fear, and everything to do with understanding, respect, and perhaps something even more profound. The trial had begun, but it had already changed him. Life on the station had become unpredictable for Elias Ward. The trial of worth had revealed much about himself, about humanity, and about Selthira's interest. But the galaxy was never simple, and not everyone approved of what was unfolding. For some, a human impressing, or worse, being chosen by one of the galaxy's most respected strategists was unacceptable. The trouble began quietly, as most dangerous things do. Messages arrived for Elias, small, anonymous notes warning him to be careful, to avoid certain areas of the station, to stop drawing attention. At first, he ignored them, thinking them pranks or misunderstandings. Selthira, however, noticed immediately. Her amber eyes darkened when she read the reports from security. "You are being targeted," she said one evening, her tone calm but sharp. Elias could hear the undercurrent of warning. "Certain factions in the galaxy do not want this union to occur. They fear your species, not because of your strength, but because you are underestimated. They will attempt to manipulate, intimidate, or even harm you. That is why I will protect you, and why you must learn to navigate these dangers." Elias was inspecting a cargo bay when an alien technician, unknown to him, tried to tamper with a power panel that could have caused a serious accident. The technician moved with intent, but Elias noticed subtle inconsistencies in the wiring and the faint glow of unauthorized energy. His human instinct for caution kicked in. He called security immediately, preventing what could have been a dangerous incident. Salthira, observing from the shadows, appeared beside him almost instantly. "You acted correctly," she said. "Most candidates would have ignored it, thinking it was a malfunction. You noticed the threat and responded with precision. That is why you continue to survive. That is why you continue to impress." Anonymous messages escalated into minor sabotage. Systems went offline at inconvenient times, supplies went missing, and strange warnings appeared on his console screens. Each time, Elias managed to prevent serious damage. He discovered that calm observation, reasoning, and patience were far more powerful than brute force. Salthira's admiration for him grew. She began to train him in subtle tactics, ways to detect danger, methods to protect himself without confrontation, strategies to navigate political tensions. Unlike other instructors in the galaxy, she did not push him to fight or dominate. Instead, she emphasized observation, empathy, and understanding the motives of others. "You are not a warrior," she said one evening as they walked the observation deck, overlooking distant nebulae. "And you do not need to be. You survive and influence because of your mind and your integrity. Most species underestimate such qualities. That is why you are exceptional. I never thought my quiet, ordinary habits would matter so much. And you will learn that humans are underestimated for a reason. They survive through qualities others ignore." Salthira occasionally introduced simulations that mimicked sabotage or crises, pushing him to react under pressure. Each time he succeeded not through force, but through analysis, calm reasoning, and quick thinking. However, the tension was not just external. Other humans on the station began to react differently. Some envied him, others feared the attention he received, and a few wondered if he had been chosen for reasons beyond his understanding. He found himself isolated in small ways, trusted by few except Salthira, who observed him relentlessly yet with care. The first major test of the new threats came unexpectedly. During a routine council meeting, the station's communications system was hacked. False reports of disaster in a nearby sector spread rapidly, creating panic. Some council members suggested abandoning the station, while others demanded immediate military action. Elias analyzed the situation quickly. He discovered that the reports were fabricated, likely an attempt to manipulate the station into conflict or failure. Without hesitation, he informed Salthira and the station's leadership, presenting evidence that exposed the false information. The station avoided unnecessary panic and potential disaster. Salthira's eyes glimmered with approval. "You acted decisively," she said. "You prevented chaos without aggression. This is what humans can do, create stability in moments of crisis. That is why you are being tested. That is why your actions matter." And that more than anything else made him stand out. Despite his successes, danger was never far. One night, a group of alien agents attempted to intercept him in a secluded corridor, aiming to intimidate or harm him. Elias, relying on his observations and prior training with Salthira, navigated the situation carefully. He avoided confrontation, used the environment to protect himself, and alerted station security without causing panic. The agents were detained, their plans foiled. Salthira arrived moments later, her presence as commanding as ever. "You have survived another attempt," she said. "Others would have panicked, but you remain composed. That is your strength. That is what makes humans underestimated and formidable." Sabotage, misinformation, and political manipulation became routine challenges. Elias adapted. He began to anticipate the motives of others, understanding that many species acted out of fear, pride, or prejudice. He learned to respond with intelligence, subtlety, and unwavering moral choice. Through it all, Salthira remained by his side, not as a commander issuing orders, but as a mentor, observer, and protector. She introduced him to cultural practices, explained alien politics, and shared insights into her own species' expectations. The bond between them deepened, not in romance, at least not yet, but in trust, respect, and mutual understanding. One evening, after successfully resolving a delicate political dispute that could have escalated into conflict, Salthira took Elias to a quiet corner of the station. The stars outside stretched endlessly, their distant light reflecting in the calm of the observation deck. "You are ready for the next stage," she said. The threats you face now are no longer hypothetical. Others will attempt to stop this union. You will face danger, manipulation, and challenge. But you are prepared, not because you are the strongest, but because you are human, and humans endure when others underestimate them. Because you have already proven that humanity survives not by force, but by courage, patience, and integrity. Those who oppose you will underestimate you at every turn. That is your advantage. That is why I chose you and why I will not abandon you. He was a symbol, a test of humanity's underestimated strength. The galaxy had dismissed humans as weak, chaotic, and insignificant. Through quiet courage, moral choice, and unwavering patience, Elias had begun to show that humans could endure challenges no one expected. And as he stood beside Selthira, watching the stars shimmer beyond the station, he realized something else. He was not alone. The strategist had chosen to stand with him, to guide him, and to protect him. Her presence was both a shield and a challenge. She demanded his best, expected his courage, and trusted his judgment. Elias felt a quiet confidence rising within him. The threats, the challenges, and the political pressures were real, and they would continue. But he had learned something crucial. Being underestimated could be a weapon. Quiet perseverance, observation, and moral courage could turn danger into opportunity. The galaxy had underestimated humans for centuries. But now, Elias Ward had begun to show them the truth. He was human. He acted with integrity. He survived when others faltered. And with Selthira by his side, he was ready to face whatever the galaxy might throw at him next. The enemies of the Union had shown themselves. They had attempted sabotage, intimidation, and manipulation. But Elias had survived, and humanity had begun to demonstrate its quiet, unassuming power. The station, the galaxy, and even Selthira herself were watching. And the next stage of the challenge, the true test of human endurance and ingenuity, was only beginning. Elias took a deep breath, feeling the weight of responsibility, the tension of the threats, and the quiet determination that had carried him this far. The galaxy would continue to underestimate him, but he had learned the truth. Humans endured, humans persevered, and humans could triumph in ways the universe had never expected. He was ready. The day of the ceremony arrived with a quiet tension that seemed to hum through the station. Elias Ward had faced trials, threats, and constant observation for months, and now it all came to a head. The galaxy had been watching the quiet human logistics officer, and for the first time the outcome would be seen in full. Selthira stood beside him in the ceremonial hall, tall and radiant. Her presence alone commanded respect. Even the most cynical diplomats and officers felt a strange reverence. Her skin shimmered with faint violet and amber hues, reflecting calm authority and anticipation. She did not need to speak. Her eyes, fixed on Elias, communicated certainty and trust. Elias wore a simple human uniform, clean but modest. He was not a warrior, nor a diplomat, nor a conqueror. He was himself, a human who had persevered, acted with integrity, and survived in ways no one expected. That was enough. The council gathered, representatives of dozens of species, all with their eyes on Elias and Selthira. Some were skeptical, some curious, and others openly hostile. The rival faction that had attempted sabotage in the past was present, their expressions hard, their bodies tense. They had tried to prevent this union, to discredit humanity, and to enforce their belief that humans were weak and unworthy. But Elias was ready. The ceremony began not with speeches, but with a ritual unique to Selthira's species. Each step was symbolic, a test of understanding, empathy, and unity. Elias followed carefully, observing, learning, and participating as best he could. He made no mistakes, not because he had studied the rituals, but because he approached them with sincerity, attention, and respect. Selthira guided him with quiet gestures, never forcing, never commanding. She trusted him to act according to his understanding, and he did. The council watched in silence as the ritual progressed, some leaning forward in surprise, others whispering to each other. Then came the moment of declaration. Selthira turned to the council, her voice ringing clear and unwavering. Elias Ward is worthy, not by force, not by decree, but by action, character, and integrity. He has faced trials, threats, and danger with courage and calm. He has demonstrated qualities that my species values and more. He is human, yet he embodies the traits that make humanity remarkable. They had tried to prevent the union, but Elias' actions had proven something they could not deny. Humans were capable of extraordinary strength in subtle, unassuming ways. Elias felt his heart race. The words were overwhelming, but he stayed calm. He had faced threats, crises, and moral challenges before, but this, the scrutiny of an entire galaxy, was new. yet he did not falter. He had learned to act with integrity, to stay calm under pressure, and to observe the intentions of others. Now those lessons mattered more than ever. Sylthera approached him, her amber eyes meeting his. "Are you ready?" she asked softly. I think so," Elias replied. He swallowed, feeling a mixture of fear, excitement, and anticipation. "I never thought it would come to this." Representatives of various species stepped forward to offer blessings, ceremonial gifts, and words of acknowledgement. Some were hesitant, others respectful, and a few openly critical. Elias accepted each with grace, humility, and quiet strength. He did not seek approval, but he did not avoid it either. The rival faction attempted one last interference. During the blessing, a subtle energy disturbance appeared near the ceremonial chamber, a test of control and authority meant to disrupt the ceremony. Security was alerted, but Elias noticed it first. Calmly, he analyzed the source, identified the malfunction, and corrected it before it could escalate. The council witnessed his decisive, unflustered action, and even the most skeptical delegates could not ignore it. Sylthera's expression softened, a faint smile appearing. "See," she said quietly, "you act not with force but with precision. That is the power of humans." He understood that the marriage was not just a personal bond, but a symbol of what humans could achieve when underestimated. It was a statement to the galaxy that humans were not to be dismissed, that they could endure, inspire, and influence through courage, patience, and integrity. Finally, the moment arrived when Sylthera spoke the words that would bind them. Her voice resonated across the hall, steady and clear. "Elias Ward, will you join me, not as a subject, not as a curiosity, but as a partner? Will you share your life with me to stand together to face the galaxy as equals?" He remembered the moments of fear, the choices he had made, and the quiet strength that had carried him through each challenge. He thought of Sylthera not as a powerful alien commander, but as someone who had trusted him, guided him, and seen the potential in him that the galaxy had ignored. "I will," he said finally, his voice calm but resolute. "I will join you. Not because I am forced, but because I choose to." Sylthera reached for his hand. Her touch was light, respectful, and firm. Elias took it, feeling a sense of connection, trust, and partnership that went beyond words. The ceremony concluded with a celebration, not just of their union, but of the principles that had carried them both through the trials: courage, patience, integrity, and understanding. The weeks that followed were quiet but profound. The station adjusted to the new reality. Humans were no longer underestimated in small ways. Their presence and abilities were noted with respect. Aliens who had dismissed them now treated them with caution and admiration. Elias did not seek power or status. He continued his work, maintaining the quiet strength that had always defined him. But now his actions carried weight, influence, and recognition across species. Sylthera and Elias shared time together, learning from each other, understanding each other's cultures, and navigating the complexities of interstellar life. Their bond was not merely personal, it was symbolic, representing a shift in perception of humanity across the galaxy. Where once humans were dismissed as weak or inconsequential, they were now seen as capable, resilient, and quietly formidable. The rival faction attempted to stir conflict once more, but Elias' calm, strategic thinking, combined with Sylthera's guidance and authority, prevented escalation. Humanity's influence began to grow, not through war or aggression, but through intelligence, integrity, and the quiet power of being underestimated. As months passed, other systems began to recognize the Union as a positive example. Humans were invited to diplomatic councils, respected in negotiations, and increasingly relied upon in situations requiring patience, courage, and careful decision-making. Elias remained the same man he had always been, quiet, attentive, and morally steadfast. Yet the galaxy's perception of humans had changed entirely. One evening, Elias stood on the observation deck with Sylthera, watching distant stars swirl in brilliant patterns. He had never imagined this life, not the trials, the threats, or the recognition. And yet here he was, not a hero in the traditional sense, but a human whose calm courage, moral integrity, and quiet strength had influenced the galaxy in ways few could comprehend. "You have done well," Sylthera said softly, her voice carrying warmth and admiration. "Not because of what you were expected to do, but because of who you are. The galaxy has learned to see humans differently, and that is your achievement as much as ours." "I just tried to do the right thing." Sylthera stood beside him, a partner in every sense, and together they symbolized the potential of humanity across the stars. The galaxy had witnessed a quiet human logistics officer rise above expectation, not through domination, not through conquest, but through intelligence, integrity, and the simple courage to do what was right. And in doing so, Elia's ward had shown that humanity was no longer underestimated. The marriage ceremony, the trials, and the challenges were not just the culmination of personal struggle. They were a turning point for human recognition in the galaxy. And as Elias stood beside Saelthira, hand in hand, he realized that the story was far from over. Humanity had endured, thrived, and would continue to shape the stars in ways no one had imagined. For the first time, Elias felt a profound sense of peace. He had faced trials, dangers, and skepticism, and had emerged not only alive but respected and recognized. The galaxy had learned that humans, quiet and unassuming though they might be, were capable of extraordinary strength. And Saelthira, who had seen it all from the beginning, smiled beside him, knowing that together they had begun a new era, one in which humanity's worth was finally undeniable. Elias looked out at the endless expanse of stars and thought of Earth, of home, and of the quiet courage that had guided him through it all. The journey had been long, filled with tests, threats, and challenges. But it had proven something profound. Humans endured, humans persevered, and humans could inspire awe without raising weapons, without commanding armies, without seeking glory. They simply acted as themselves, and that was enough.